I still remember the exact moment I realized that every fight I had ever won meant nothing compared to the one fight I kept losing. It was 1970, and I was lying in a hospital bed, my back injured so severely that doctors told me I might never practice martial arts again. I had defeated every opponent who had dared to challenge me. I had broken through barriers in Hollywood that people said were impossible for an Asian man to break. I had revolutionized martial arts and created my own fighting philosophy. By every external measure, I was victorious. So, yet lying there in that sterile room, unable to move without excruciating pain, I faced the most humbling truth of my entire existence. The one opponent I had never truly defeated was staring back at me from the reflection in the window beside my bed. That opponent knew every weakness I tried to hide. That opponent whispered every doubt I fought to silence. That opponent held every fear I refused to acknowledge. That opponent was me. Not the Bruce Lee the world saw, but the Bruce Lee that existed in the shadows of my own consciousness. The part of me that still carried the insecurities of a teenager in Hong Kong. The part that questioned whether I truly deserved the success I had achieved. The part that wondered if I was just an imposter who had gotten lucky. In that moment of forced stillness, I understood with crystal clarity that your greatest victory is never over another person. Your greatest victory is over yourself. You think you know what victory looks like, don't you? You think it's the promotion you finally get, the relationship that finally works out, the goal you finally achieve, the recognition you finally receive. But I'm here to tell you something that will shake you to your core. Every external victory you've ever celebrated is hollow if you haven't first achieved victory over the enemy that lives within your own mind. Every trophy you've won is meaningless if you're still losing the daily battle against your own limitations. Every success you've accumulated is fragile if it's built on a foundation of self-doubt, fear, and internal conflict. Listen closely, because what I'm about to share isn't just about fighting. It's about the war that determines whether you live as a victim of your own mind or as the master of your own destiny. It's about understanding that the person standing between you and everything you want to achieve isn't your boss, your circumstances, your past, or your limitations. It's you. The real you. The unexamined you, the you that operates from unconscious patterns, inherited beliefs, and emotional reactions that you've never questioned. When I first stepped into a martial arts school in Hong Kong at the age of 13, I thought I was learning to fight other people. My teacher, IP Man, was legendary for his Wing Chun technique, and I was eager to become as formidable as he was. I trained obsessively, practicing forms until my muscles ached, sparring until my knuckles bled, studying every aspect of combat strategy and technique. I became technically proficient, physically powerful, and tactically sophisticated. But what I didn't understand then was that IP Man wasn't just teaching me to fight opponents. He was teaching me to fight the most dangerous enemy I would ever face. The one who knew all my moves before I made them. The one who could defeat me without landing a single blow. That enemy was my undisciplined mind, my reactive emotions, my unconscious habits, my unexamined assumptions about what was possible and what wasn't. Every time I lost my temper, that enemy won. Every time I let pride cloud my judgment, that enemy won. And every time I allowed fear to dictate my choices, that enemy won. Every time I reacted instead of responding, that enemy won. I could defeat a dozen opponents in the training hall, but if I couldn't defeat the chaos in my own consciousness, I was still fundamentally defeated. You're fighting this same battle right now, aren't you? Every morning, when you wake up and immediately start criticizing yourself for not being further along in life. Every time you have an opportunity to speak up, but let fear keep you silent. Every moment when you know what you should do, but find yourself doing what you've always done instead. Every instance when you let other people's opinions matter more than your own truth. Every day when you choose comfort over growth, safety over possibility, the familiar over the extraordinary. These aren't just mistakes or weaknesses. These are defeats in the most important war you'll ever fight. But here's what most people never realize about this internal battle. The enemy you're fighting isn't some foreign invader that attacked your mind from the outside. The enemy you're fighting is made up of parts of yourself that once served a purpose, but have now become obstacles to your growth. The caution that kept you safe as a child, but now keeps you from taking necessary risks. The need for approval that helped you belong to your family, but now prevents you from expressing your authentic self. The perfectionism that helped you achieve high standards, but now paralyzes you with fear of making mistakes. These aspects of yourself aren't evil. They're not defects to be ashamed of. They're outdated software running on an updated system. They're survival strategies that worked in one context but are limiting you in another. Your greatest victory isn't about destroying these parts of yourself. It's about understanding them, honoring what they were trying to protect, and then consciously choosing when to engage them and when to transcend them. I learned this lesson the hard way during my early years in America. When I first arrived in San Francisco in 1959, I carried with me all the conditioning of my upbringing in Hong Kong. I had been taught to respect authority without question, to follow traditional methods without deviation, to value group harmony over individual expression. These qualities had served me well in the context of Chinese culture, but in America, they became limitations that prevented me from fully expressing my potential. The traditional martial arts community expected me to teach Wing Chun exactly as I had learned it, without modification or innovation. But something inside me knew that true mastery required going beyond mere repetition of established patterns. I began experimenting, questioning, adapting. I started incorporating techniques from boxing, fencing, and wrestling. I challenged fundamental assumptions about stance, distance, and timing. I was discovering my own way of understanding combat, but this meant I had to fight not just against external resistance from traditionalists, but against internal resistance from my own conditioning. The part of me that had been trained to respect tradition without question fought against the part of me that saw possibilities beyond tradition. The part of me that feared being rejected by my community fought against the part of me that needed to express my authentic unding. The part of me that wanted to fit in fought against the part of me that was born to stand out. This internal battle was far more exhausting and far more important than any physical fight I had ever engaged in, Your greatest victory requires the same kind of internal revolution. You must be willing to examine every belief you've inherited about what's possible for someone like you. You must question every assumption you've accepted about what you're capable of achieving. You must challenge every limitation you've imposed on yourself based on past experiences, other people's opinions, or cultural conditioning. This isn't rebellion for its own sake. This is archaeology of the soul, digging through layers of accumulated conditioning to discover who you really are beneath all the programming. The process begins with what I call conscious observation. Most people live their entire lives on autopilot, reacting to circumstances from unconscious patterns without ever stepping back to examine what's actually driving their behavior. They feel angry and immediately blame external circumstances. They feel afraid and immediately assume the fear is justified. They feel limited and immediately conclude that the limitations are real. But conscious observation means becoming aware of your internal processes as they happen. When you feel that familiar surge of anxiety before a challenging conversation, instead of immediately trying to avoid the conversation or push through the anxiety, you pause and observe. What specifically are you feeling? Where do you feel it in your body? What thoughts are arising with the feeling? What assumptions are you making about what might happen? What past experiences are informing your current reaction? This isn't analysis for its own sake. This is intelligence gathering about your own internal operations. I discovered the power of conscious observation during my preparation for Enter the Dragon. The pressure was enormous. This was my opportunity to show the world what I was truly capable of, but it was also my chance to fail spectacularly on an international stage. Every day, I felt waves of doubt, fear, and anxiety that had nothing to do with my technical abilities and everything to do with my unconscious patterns of self-sabotage. Instead of trying to fight these feelings or pretend they didn't exist, I began observing them with the same precision I used to study an opponent's fighting style. I noticed that the doubt intensified whenever I thought about the expectations others had for me. I observed that the fear peaked when I imagined scenarios where I might not live up to the image I had created. I recognized that the anxiety was strongest when I focused on outcomes I couldn't control rather than processes I could influence. This observation didn't immediately eliminate the challenging emotions, but it gave me power over them. When you can see the mechanism clearly, you can choose whether to engage it or transcend it. When you understand what triggers your patterns, you can consciously choose different responses. When you recognize the difference between current reality and inherited conditioning, you can act from possibility rather than limitation. But conscious observation is only the beginning. Your greatest victory requires what I call conscious choice. This is the moment-by-moment decision to respond from your highest self rather than your conditioned self. It's the choice to act from possibility rather than history. It's the decision to express your authentic nature rather than performing a role that others expect you to play. Conscious choice isn't always comfortable. In fact, it's often deeply uncomfortable because it requires you to act against the gravitational pull of your established patterns. When your conditioning says, play it safe, conscious choice might say, take the risk. When your programming says, don't rock the boat, conscious choice might say, speak your truth. When your history says, "You're not good enough," conscious choice says, "Let's find out what's actually possible." Every moment of conscious choice is a victory over the unconscious forces that have been running your life without your permission. Every time you choose growth over comfort, truth over convenience, possibility over probability, you're winning the most important battle you'll ever fight. These victories might seem small in the moment, but they accumulate into a transformation that reshapes not just your external circumstances, but your entire relationship with reality itself. This brings me to what I consider the ultimate realization about victory over yourself. The self you need to overcome isn't your enemy, it's your teacher. Every limitation you discover is showing you where you have room to grow. Every fear you uncover is pointing toward an area where courage is needed. Every pattern you recognize is offering you the opportunity to choose something different. The very aspects of yourself that seem to be obstacles are actually doorways to greater freedom. Freedom. I experienced this most powerfully during the development of Jeet Kune Do. For years, I had been fighting against the limitations of traditional martial arts, seeing them as obstacles to my expression. I was trying to overcome Wing Chun, overcome classical methods, overcome established approaches. But this opposition was actually keeping me trapped in reaction rather than creation. I was defining myself by what I was against rather than what I was for. The breakthrough came when I stopped trying to overcome these systems and started learning from them. Instead of rejecting Wing Chun, I extracted its essential principles. Instead of dismissing boxing, I integrated its valuable elements. Instead of fighting against tradition, I honored its wisdom while adapting its applications. The enemy became the teacher. The limitation became the foundation for transcendence. Your greatest victory will come from the same kind of transformation. The parts of yourself that you've been fighting against are actually trying to teach you something essential about who you can become. Your perfectionism isn't just an obstacle to creativity, it's pointing toward the possibility of excellence. Your fear isn't just a limitation. Your need for approval isn't just a weakness to overcome. It's revealing your deeper need for authentic connection. When you stop fighting these aspects of yourself and start learning from them, everything changes. You're no longer at war with yourself. You're no longer divided against yourself. You're no longer wasting energy on internal conflict that could be directed toward external creation. You become integrated, whole, aligned with all aspects of your nature working together toward your highest expression. But integration doesn't happen automatically. It requires what I call conscious cultivation. This is the deliberate practice of developing the qualities and capabilities that your higher self requires. Just as I had to train my body to execute martial arts techniques effectively, you must train your consciousness to operate from its most powerful and authentic configuration. And the most powerful conscious cultivation begins with clarity about who you're becoming. Most people focus on what they want to achieve, but achievement is the result of who you become in the process of achieving it. The question isn't, what do I want to accomplish? The question is, who do I need to become in order to accomplish what I'm meant to accomplish? This requires honest assessment of the qualities, capabilities, and characteristics that your highest expression requires. If your calling requires leadership, you must cultivate the ability to influence and inspire others. If your purpose involves creativity, you must develop your capacity for original expression and artistic risk-taking. Sicking. If your mission demands courage, you must practice facing fear and acting despite uncertainty. If your vision requires persistence, you must strengthen your ability to continue despite setbacks and obstacles. This cultivation isn't about adding something to yourself that isn't already there. It's about removing the obstacles that prevent your natural qualities from expressing themselves fully. Just as a sculptor doesn't add material to create a masterpiece, but removes everything that obscures the beauty already contained within the stone, your development involves stripping away everything that masks your authentic power. I learned this during my recovery from the back injury that nearly ended my career. Lying in that hospital bed, unable to rely on my physical capabilities, I was forced to discover what remained when everything I thought I was had been stripped away. I couldn't train my body, so I trained my mind. I couldn't practice techniques, so I practiced principles. I couldn't engage in physical combat, so I engaged in philosophical exploration. What I discovered during those months of forced stillness was that my identity as a martial artist was far smaller than my identity as a conscious being exploring the limits of human potential. The injury that seemed like the end of everything became the beginning of something far more significant. The limitation that appeared to be a defeat became the foundation for the greatest victory of my life. This is the paradox of victory over yourself. The things that seem to defeat you are often the things that awaken you to possibilities you never would have discovered otherwise. The challenges that appear to limit you are often the forces that push you beyond limits you didn't even know you had accepted. The obstacles that feel like enemies are often the teachers that show you strengths you didn't know you possessed. Your greatest victory isn't waiting for you at some future destination. When you finally overcome all your limitations, your greatest victory is available to you right now, in this moment, through your willingness to see yourself clearly, choose consciously, and act authentically regardless of how you feel or what you fear. Every moment when you choose truth over comfort, courage over safety, growth over stagnation, you're experiencing the greatest victory possible for a human being. But this victory isn't a one-time achievement. It's a continuous process of choosing your highest self over your conditioned self, your possibility over your history, your potential over your patterns. Each day brings new opportunities to win this battle. Each challenge offers another chance to choose who you're becoming over who you've been. Each moment presents the possibility of responding from your authentic power, rather than reacting from your inherited programming. The practices that support this ongoing victory are simpler than most people imagine, but more profound than most people realize. The first is daily self-examination. Every evening, spend a few minutes reviewing your day, not from the perspective of what you accomplished or failed to accomplish, but from the perspective of who you were being in each significant moment. When did you act from your highest self? When did you react from your conditioned self? When did you choose growth over comfort? When did you choose comfort over growth? This isn't about judgment or self-criticism. It's about awareness and learning. You're recognizing the specific situations, people, and circumstances that tend to trigger your unconscious reactions so you can prepare different responses. You're celebrating the moments when you did choose consciously so you can strengthen those neural pathways. The second practice is conscious breathing. This sounds almost ridiculously simple, but it's the foundation of all conscious choice. When you're breathing consciously, you're present. When you're present, you can see your options clearly. When you can see your options clearly, you can choose from possibility rather than pattern. Most people live their entire lives breathing unconsciously, which means they live their entire lives choosing unconsciously. 3 minutes of conscious breathing each morning and evening will begin to rewire your nervous system for conscious choice. Pay attention to each inhale and exhale. Feel the air entering and leaving your body, and notice the pause between breaths. In this simple practice, you're training your attention to remain present rather than getting lost in thoughts about the past or worries about the future. Present moment awareness is the foundation of all personal mastery. The third practice is conscious challenge. Every week, identify one area where you've been choosing comfort over growth and deliberately choose growth over comfort. This might mean having a conversation you've been avoiding, taking on a project that stretches your capabilities, expressing an opinion that feels risky, or simply doing something you've never done before. The specific challenge matters less than the practice of choosing growth over the gravitational pull of your comfort zone. Each conscious challenge is a victory over the part of yourself that prefers the known over the unknown, the safe over the possible, the comfortable over the transformational. These victories compound over time, gradually expanding your sense of what's possible and strengthening your confidence in your ability to handle whatever life presents. You're not just building specific capabilities, you're building the meta-capability of conscious choice itself. The fourth practice is conscious expression. This might be through creative work, honest communication, physical movement, or simply allowing yourself to feel and express your genuine emotions rather than the emotions you think you should have. Authentic expression is the natural result of victory over the false self, and it's also the practice that strengthens your connection to the true self. Most people spend so much energy maintaining their image, meeting others' expectations, and avoiding disapproval that they lose touch with their own authentic nature. Conscious expression is the antidote to this disconnection. When you express authentically, you're not just communicating with others. You're communicating with yourself. You're discovering who you really are beneath all the masks and personas you've constructed. But the ultimate practice, the one that encompasses all others, is what I call conscious love. This is the recognition that every aspect of yourself, including the parts you've been fighting against, is worthy of understanding, compassion, and integration. The perfectionist in you isn't your enemy. It's a part of you that cares deeply about excellence. The fearful part of you isn't your weakness. It's a part of you that's trying to keep you safe. The angry part of you isn't your darkness. It's a part of you that recognizes injustice and wants to create change. When you approach yourself with conscious love rather than unconscious judgment, everything becomes workable. The internal war ends not because you've destroyed your enemies, but because you've recognized that there were never any enemies, only aspects of yourself that needed understanding and integration. This is practical wisdom that transforms how you relate to every challenge, every setback, every moment of difficulty in your life. Your greatest victory is available to you right now. Not when you've fixed all your problems, not when you've achieved all your goals, not when you've become the perfect version of yourself. Right now, in this moment, through your willingness to see yourself clearly, choose consciously, and express authentically. The enemy you've been fighting is also the ally you've been seeking. The limitations you've been trying to overcome are also the teachers you've been needing. Victory over yourself doesn't mean becoming someone different. It means becoming who you've always been beneath all the conditioning, programming, and patterns that have obscured your true nature. It means returning to the essential self that existed before you learned to doubt your worth, question your capabilities, or limit your possibilities. It means remembering the powerful, creative, authentic being that you are and have always been. The battle is not out there. The battle is in here. The victory is not over them. The victory is over the false beliefs, limiting patterns, and unconscious reactions that have been running your life without your permission. Every moment you choose consciousness over unconsciousness, authenticity over performance, possibility over limitation, you're winning the greatest victory available to any human being. Your greatest victory is over yourself, but this victory isn't a destination you reach. It's a way of living, a moment-by-moment choice to be who you really are rather than who you think you should be. It's available to you right now. The question is, will you choose it? Will you stop fighting the war outside long enough to win the war inside? Will you recognize that every external victory is hollow if you haven't first achieved victory over the only opponent who has ever truly had power over you? The choice is yours. The victory is waiting. The only person standing between you and your greatest triumph is the person staring back at you in the mirror. But here's the secret I discovered in that hospital bed all those years ago. That person isn't your enemy. That person is your greatest teacher, your most important ally, your ultimate partner in creating a life worthy of who you really are. Your greatest victory is over yourself, and that victory begins the moment you stop fighting who you are and start becoming who you're meant to be.